Sometimes a football team is so unbelievably bad, it's embarrassing for all involved. Today, we're diving into the lowest of the low, the seasons that went horribly wrong, the teams that pretty much forgot how to play football, and the clubs whose fans deserved medals for even turning up. This is every Scottish football team that was embarrassingly bad. Brechin City, 2017-18. At the end of the 2016-17 season, Brechin City finished 4th in League 1, before going on a playoff run that saw them beat Raith Rovers and Alloa, meaning for the 2017-18 season, Brechin City would play in the Scottish Championship for the first time in their history. The issue was though, when the season started, reality hit them like a bus. Brechin didn't just struggle, they produced one of the bleakest seasons Scottish football has ever seen. They didn't win a single game, not one. The first Scottish football team since Vale of Leven, 126 years previously, to go an entire league campaign completely winless. Their first and only victory of the entire season was a cup tie against Buckie Thistle from the Highland League. That was it. That was the only highlight. In the Championship, Brechin collected 4 points. 4 home draws, and not a single away point the entire year. In fact, if you take their away form, they'd have been in a better position just forfeiting every game. By March, relegation was basically a formality, confirmed after a 2-0 loss to Greenock Morton. And just to add a final bit of misery, they ended the season with a 5-1 hammering at home to Queen of the South. Now you'd think dropping back to League 1 might have steadied the ship, but no, Brechin ended up finishing bottom of the league. Back-to-back relegations. And in League 2, it was the same story. They spent the whole season trying to avoid finishing bottom again, and only survived due to the league being suspended in 2020. They were literally saved by a global pandemic. Not for long though, because the season after that, Brechin were relegated out of the SPFL altogether. From a historic promotion, to the worst championship season ever recorded, to a 3-year free fall straight out of the SPFL altogether. You gotta feel for Brechin City fans, cause wow. Raith Rovers 2004-05. It was spring 2004 and Raith Rovers were skint. They had no money. They'd narrowly avoided relegation the previous season and the board were openly begging for someone to come and share their financial pain. So in came Claude Anelka, the brother of Nicholas Anelka, who was fairly well known in the game by this point, having played for Arsenal and Real Madrid. Now unlike his brother, Claude had never really been a professional footballer. He was a former lower league player, part-time DJ, and a man with zero coaching experience, who I should add had never even stepped foot in Scotland. But Raith were desperate. He told them, "Give me the manager's job and I'll give you 300,000. At his unveiling, Anelka was definitely talking the talk. He promised to turn Raith Rovers into the third force in Scottish football. Celtic, Rangers, Raith Rovers. He talked about youth academies, global scouting networks, and a contacts book full of talent. What fans got instead was a wave of French amateurs from regional leagues that even Football Manager doesn't bother generating. Guys who looked like they'd won a competition to appear in a first division squad. He also added a centre-back on loan from QPR, a midfielder from the English non-leagues, a guy from the Slovakian second tier, and released half of the existing team before pre-season. Their first friendly was a 14-a-side match in a public park, where I'm honestly imagining they used jackets as the goalposts. When the season started, Raith were knocked out the 2 cups by lower league sides and only picked up 1 point in their first 10 games. Assistant managers quit to save their reputations, the chairman resigned, and after 9 losses in 10 games, Anelka stepped down as manager. But he wasn't quite finished. He stayed on as the director of football, insisting he could still help the club. But then he realised he couldn't. Raith were doomed, relegation already in the post by October. To be fair, Anelka later admitted what everyone already knew. His plan was over-optimistic, his signings weren't good enough, and Scottish football turned out to be harder than he thought. His time at the club set Raith Rovers back years. Fort William 2018-19. Fort William's 2018-19 season wasn't just embarrassing, it became international news for being one of the worst campaigns ever seen in senior British football. Fort William were playing in the Highland League, the 5th tier of Scottish football, and in the previous season, they didn't win a single league game. They were miles behind. But in the 2018-19 season, it somehow got worse. They finished the season with 0 wins, 2 points, 245 goals conceded, and a goal difference of minus 224. You didn't mishear that. They conceded 245 goals in a single season. Most clubs don't do that in a decade. At one point, they were averaging 6 goals conceded per match. Some games were so one-sided that the highlights looked like an attack v defense training session. To make things even worse, they were actually given a 9-point deduction for fielding an ineligible player on 3 different occasions, meaning their final total for the season was minus 7. And it wasn't like they were losing 2-0 every week. They were getting annihilated. 10-0, 11-1, 12-2. It got so bad that BBC Sport did a documentary on them. Fort William, the worst team in Britain. When your season becomes a TV special, that's when you know things have gone very, very wrong. Here's the weird part though. Due to how bad they were, they actually began to start building a bit of a cult following online. In the Highland League at the time though, there was no relegation, and in the next season, they actually won a couple of games. It's at this point that I ask that if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing. It's a massive, massive help. Back to it. East Stirlingshire. You'll notice I didn't say a year there, and that's because if you ever think your club has it bad, just remember East Stirlingshire were one of the worst ever teams for like a decade. In the early 2000s in particular, that was 5 straight years of being the worst team in Scottish football. At the turn of the century, East Stirlingshire were basically being held together with duct tape. Their finances were so bad that players were getting paid like £10 a week, and their manager, Dennis Newell, was literally the only unpaid manager in senior Scottish football. That's when you know you're struggling, when even the guy in charge is volunteering. The results on the pitch were bad. From 2002 to 2007, they finished bottom of the entire Scottish Football League every single season. 5 years in a row, a record no one wants. Their lowest point came in 2004, when they didn't just finish bottom, they completely fell apart. They lost 24 league games in a row and ended the season with 8 points from 36 games. 2 wins, 2 draws, that was it. 8 points in a 9-month league campaign. It got so bad that the Scottish Football League introduced the East Stirlingshire rule from 2005-06 onwards. If you finished bottom of the 3rd division 2 years in a row, you could be stripped of full membership and reduced to associate member status, which basically meant you'd lose your voting rights and be treated like a part-time guest. And guess who immediately finished bottom 2 years in a row? Yep, East Stirlingshire. A league vote was held on whether to demote them, and somehow the other clubs voted to give them one last chance, with one condition: do not finish bottom next season. And so, it all came down to the final day of the 2007-08 season. East Stirlingshire had to win or they were done, stripped of status, and possibly finished as a senior club. And in their last ever match at their old home, Firs Park, they actually did it. A 3-1 win over Montrose kept them off the bottom of the table, and for once, the miracle happened. East Stirlingshire survived by the skin of their teeth. One of the most embarrassingly bad, yet weirdly heroic chapters in Scottish football.